Thanks for joining us for our Wednesday evening midweek service and Bible study. Stay tuned for a video overview of the sermon and some important announcements immediately following the service.
If we're honest with ourselves, my friend George Hurt said that after COVID, that anybody who didn't have some mental health issues after COVID had to be crazy before COVID. Yeah, all of us challenged, and whatever our challenge was, just looked like COVID amplified it. Every Sunday, I do my very best to come up here and try to be encouraging and uplifting, and no matter what has happened, I don't want to bring it here, but today, I want to share with you something that happened this week. I'm not sure how many of you heard the story of Arlana Miller, a 19-year-old from Southern University, a freshman. She's from Texas, graduated from DeSoto, 19 years old, and did an Instagram post where she discusses her suicide, and she tells people, she thanks her family, she tells people, don't give up, keep on fighting, and she says, it looks like I'm going against my own advice. She said, I've written many suicide letters in the past. This time I'm finally at my end. Since March, several high-profile college athletes have committed suicide. Alana's body was fished, I think, from the Mississippi River where she had jumped and committed suicide. Since March, Sarah Schultz, who was a runner for the University of Wisconsin at Madison, Katie Meyer, goalkeeper for Stanford's soccer team, Lauren Burnett, softball player James Madison in Virginia, have all committed suicide. But Alana's story is special to me. It's more significant to me because her father is one of my dear friends. I've eaten at his house. We played golf together. As a matter of fact, the day she graduated, after graduation dinner, he and I went out. He's in one of my cohorts on the Partnering to Preach. I've spoken to him almost every day this week. And to be honest with you, I've never felt so helpless as a friend. Because some stuff you can't fix. Sometimes you just got to sit and cry with people. I don't know where you are. I don't know what your challenge is if you're listening to me on Westside Worldwide. But if you are listening today, I'm here to tell you that you can change the way your story ends. Alana's father watches us, and he's talked to him yesterday. He's watching us now. He is a pastor in Monroe, Louisiana. If you are listening to me now, if you are here today, no matter how challenging your life is, no matter what burden you have, I'm here to tell you that your story does not have to end like that. That Jesus offers for us both hope and help when life is too difficult. And none of us have to go through this by ourselves. I keep hearing people, when I gave my vision for this year, people kept wanting something deep, grand, we're going to do this. No, we're going to build relationships because we can't make it by ourselves. And if church is about anything, it's not about us building bigger buildings. It's not about us having the largest choir. It's about us helping each other get through being human. Listen, God offers us hope and help when life is too tough to bear alone. I want to give you a story. I want to give you a story found in 2 Samuel, the 4th chapter. Now, it's not found like this in the New King James, but in the King James Version, it's in parentheses. It says, Jonathan, Saul's son, had a son who was lame in his feet. The King James says cripple in both feet. He was 5 years old when the news about Saul and Jonathan came from Jezreel, and his nurse took him up and fled. And it happened, as she made haste to flee, that he fell and became lame. His name was Mephibosheth. The grass withers, the flowers thereof fadeth away, but the word of our God shall stand forever. I'm talking about changing the way your story ends. Mephibosheth is an interesting story. He is, if you read in the King James, he is in parentheses. The parentheses is almost like this wasn't a part of the main story. We just added this in to help you understand. And some of us know what it feels like to be parenthetical in somebody else's story. And we're not the main story, we just something added in. The story is being told in 2 Samuel, the 4th chapter, about the lineage of Jonathan, and Saul, his father, is about to be cut off. And it's almost as if the writer of 2 Samuel says, oh, by the way, now they're not going to have their dynasty anymore. The kingdom is going to belong to David. But by the way, there's a son named Mephibosheth, but he can never be king because he's crippled in both feet, and nobody would follow a broken king. Mephibosheth, his very name means mouth, out of the mouth of shame. Mephibosheth, his condition is he is crippled in both feet. Now, the King James was written long before it was politically correct to say he was walkingly challenged or whatever. The emphasis in the text is that he's not just broken, but he's completely broken. That he is lame. In Hebrew, they don't just. There was no punctuation, so whenever they wanted to be emphatic, they would repeat. They say he's crippled in both feet, he was lame. That's almost like that song they sing about somebody being blind and couldn't see. Well, most folk who are blind can't see. But the Hebrew is emphatic in declaring that not only is Mephibosheth crippled in both of his feet, but he is lame, which means he will never reach his full potential as a man. But if that wasn't bad enough, you've got to find that Mephibosheth is in a place called Lo-Debar. If you're from our dialectic persuasion, you say Lo-Debar, but it is actually Lo-Debar. And lo means no. Debar means thing in the Hebrew. He is from nothing. Name of shame. His condition is he is crippled in both of his feet, and he lives in nothing. Here is the tragedy, that even sometimes when you see somebody's situation, you don't understand their circumstance. So the writer adds in that Mephibosheth is hurt by somebody who was trying to help him. Because of what happened with his parents, his father and grandfather are killed in battle. There is a nurse when one reads this in the Hebrew, the word, we say nurse, it's more like his guardian. The root for this word is faithfulness. It comes from the idea of a caregiver, maybe even like a foster mother, somebody who was responsible to take care of him, decides she's going to protect him, and in her haste, she drops him. What do you do in life when you're broken and it ain't your fault? How do you handle it when the way you got hurt was because somebody dropped you trying to do good? And while I'm here, I think I need to say a word about church hurt, because there are a lot of folk who like to talk about church hurt. Now, I'm talking about real church hurt. I'm not talking about you couldn't lead the song and you didn't want to be in the choir. I'm not talking about you couldn't be the servant leader. And come on, wave at me. I'm not talking about the pastor didn't call your name and you went to another church because the people at this church are messy. Yes, we are, because we specialize in helping folk get rid of mess. That's why we are messy here. That's like saying folk are sick at the hospital. That's where they go to get better. But I'm talking about there's some folk in church who have really been hurt. There's some folk who have experienced some pain. But can I suggest to you that it may be that the person who was trying to help you, the person who hurt you, really wasn't trying to hurt you. It was their intention to help you, and you just got accidentally dropped. Now let me say a couple of things while I'm here. I feel like staying here a while, and I need to tell you, you got to be careful, church people, how you rush to help people. Because sometimes you can get in such a hurry that you'll drop who you're trying to carry. And if you drop them, they are more damaged than they were before you started. You got to be careful how quick you run to be involved, because the truth of the matter is that there are a lot of people in church who were dropped and are now trying to carry other people. And you can't carry somebody if you've not dealt with your own hurt, because you will start to project into their situation what your pain was. Mephibosheth was dropped in somebody who was in a hurry to help them, and you've got to limit how much, because there are some people who keep receiving other people's hurt. You keep carrying people, and you never go out to get help for yourself, and you will soon discover that life will dry you out. You got to be careful that how quickly you run to help others, because there's a danger. Because one of the first things you'll try to do is, when you've been dropped, is you'll try to pick up other people, because you don't want them to experience the pain you've experienced. Any of you ever fly? And when you fly, one of the first things they tell you is, in case the pressure drops, make sure you put on your mask. Even if you're sitting by a child, make sure you put on your mask before you help them with theirs. And what happens to us is, many of us find ourselves in pressure situations where we're trying to mask other folk, but we ain't got on our own mask. Preach, Delvin Ashton. I'm doing. Here it is. Don't miss this. If we're going to be effective in our relationships, effective relationships require that we spend more time and resources on fewer people so that we can have a greater impact. One of the hard lessons for me as a pastor is to understand I can't save everybody. And I can't be everybody's best friend. Okay. How many of you ever heard of the Dead Sea? It's the lowest point on earth, a little over 1,400 feet below sea level. It is so salty, it is 9.6 times saltier than the sea. touches Jordan on one side, Israel on the other side, about 31 miles, 9 miles wide. It's called the Dead Sea because nothing can grow in it except for microorganisms. The reason it is called the Dead Sea is salt kills everything. As a matter of fact, the water is so dense that most people can't swim, you can only float. It is fed by the tributary of the Jordan River, but let me tell you why it's called the Dead Sea. The reason it's called the Dead Sea is because it has no outlets. And the only way water leaves, it evaporates and leaves salt in its place. It is fed by the Jordan, but it has no way of getting water out. If all you are poured into by other people's problems, trying to carry everybody, you will eventually learn that you will become a dead spot. Can I preach if I feel like it? I stop by to tell somebody here that sometimes there are bad chapters in life. This was his bad chapter, but bad chapters don't have to mean a bad story. That sometimes life is challenging, sometimes life is hard, sometimes life is difficult, and nobody says life has to be fair. Where did we get that from? Sometimes life isn't fair. Sometimes there are hard times. Sometimes there are difficult places. Sometimes you want to give up. Sometimes it doesn't look like it ought to be your turn. Life happens. And I stop by to tell you, you ain't in it by yourself. You're not here by yourself. And God specializes in making bad chapters into good stories. I wouldn't have bothered to talk to you about Mephibosheth. I told you he's only parenthetically mentioned in 2 Samuel 4. His story is found in 2 Samuel chapter 9. When you read 2 Samuel chapter 9, here is the good part. Here is the good story from a bad chapter. In 2 Samuel chapter 9, what Mephibosheth doesn't know is that while he is broken and lame, David the king says, is there anybody of the house of Saul, anybody of the house of Jonathan, my friend, that I can find? Here is a shout you look like you've been waiting for. What Mephibosheth doesn't understand is while he is broken, there is a king that's been looking for him. Don't you know there's a king who is looking for you? And the king sought him, and the king will come to your place of nothing. David said, is there anybody who I can find to show some favor? And somebody says, oh yeah. And let me tell you what God will do. God will put you on the hearts of some folk. There's a guy named Zebah who said, oh yeah, there's somebody. Where is he? He's down in nothing. He's down there in Lodabar. And can I say, I don't care how low your D-bar is, God will come to your level. I don't need everybody, but I need about 10 people in here today to say you can't get so low that the king won't come see about you. And let me tell you what excited me. Mephibosheth wasn't looking for the king was looking for him. The king is looking for you. Let me tell you what the king does. King says, go get him. Now when he finds Mephibosheth, watch what the devil does. He goes, gets Mephibosheth, and they go get Mephibosheth and bring him. And Mephibosheth is afraid. Because when Mephibosheth comes, he's saying in his mind, David is going to kill me because he thinks I'm trying to get my daddy's kingdom back. And the enemy specializes in having us think that God is out to get us. He majors in making us think that God is some great guard waiting to catch you slipping so he can get you. And that's why people run, because we got this idea that God is just waiting to send you to hell. He can't wait. But God is saying, I am not a God who's trying to catch you. You are not in prison and I'm your guard trying. I am the God who is guiding and guarding you. I'm protecting you from danger, seen and unseen. King saw him, but then the king saw him. When Mephibosheth came, Mephibosheth is nervous because he knows to be dirty in front of the king is certain death. The king knows his brokenness. Can I tell you, you don't have a hurt that God doesn't know about. There's some stuff in here that's on some of your minds right now that if anybody else knew about it, you'd be too embarrassed to sit in here. Amen. I know I'm not the only one got some stuff in my past. I mean, right now the devil just give you thoughts in your mind. Look how cute Pastor looks in that black. No, I'm just playing. It was heavy. I tried to like. But do you know God knows every secret? The stuff that happened on graduation night, God knows. Prom night, God knows. The stuff you can't tell your best friend. And we love to say, I said I wasn't going to tell nobody, but I couldn't keep. No, some of it you kept. Yeah, some of it you kept to yourself. And you know what's amazing? God knows all of that. And still didn't ask you for a reference when he got ready to use you. Now let me tell you what the king does, and I'm going to holler a couple of times. I'm going to sit down. What the king does is the king sought him. The king saw him, but the king says to him, no longer will you be in Lodabar. I want you to sit at my table. And in a Hebrew culture, to sit at the table means I take covenant with you. People you don't like, you don't sit with. I mean, we do. Amen. But they didn't. When you sit with some, that's why Jesus said, if you open up, I'll come sup with you. It literally means that we take on covenant. Here is another shout. Here's another shout that the king says, I found you in a place of nothing, but I want you to sit at my table where you have access to everything. I don't need everybody, but I ought to have somebody excited that the king has made room for me at his table. I don't have to sneak in the back door. And listen, we try to intimidate people and make folk feel bad about mistakes, but I got a seat at the king's table. And because I've been seated at the king's table, I am of royal decree. I ought to walk like a prince or a princess. Here it is. King saw you. But then the text says, the Bible reminds us that the king satisfied Mephibosheth. Once you meet the king, it doesn't mean that your problems will stop. Don't ever let anybody make you feel that if you got enough faith, you won't have pain. You got enough faith, you won't have problems. That's a lie. Because listen to the biography of Jesus, a man of sorrow, acquainted with grief. Life is rough. That's what makes heaven so appealing. We won't struggle anymore. Mephibosheth has an experience because David's son turns on him. And Mephibosheth was waiting on Ziba to go to battle with it. But Ziba tricked Mephibosheth and took all of his land. The king gave him his land back that belonged to his daddy, the king. So let me tell you, when David comes back after the victory, he says, Mephibosheth, where were you? He said, my lord, I was tricked. He invites him. He is dirty. He hasn't shaved, and he doesn't want to go because to go dirty before the king could get him killed. David said, what happened? He said, Ziba tricked me. And he said, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make Ziba give all that stuff back to you. But Mephibosheth says to the king, I don't want that stuff. It's just an honor for me to be your servant. He says, I don't want what's in your hand because I want to be in your heart. Mephibosheth says, I'm satisfied with the king. And because I'm satisfied with the king, I don't need a lot of stuff. All I'm trying to tell you is broken, dirty, damaged, and deceived, even empty, the king is saying, I still want you. Listen, I'm through. I like what the Amplified Version says. The Amplified Version of 1 Peter 5:7 says this: casting all your cares, all your anxieties, all your worries, all your concerns, once and for all on him, for he cares about you with deepest affection and watches over you very carefully. Somewhere the church put out this, that he will never put on you more than you can bear. That's not in the Bible. Let's stop it. That's nowhere in Scripture. It says you won't get a temptation above that which is fair, but what is fair is more than I can bear. Jesus says, I want you to cast your cares on me. One of my preaching mentors, O.W. Mack, says that he was lifting a log, and his son Dion, who was young but wanted to be helpful, got on the other end. He said he knew that Dion couldn't carry half of that log. So what he did was he positioned himself in the middle of that log so that all that Dion would have to lift was what he could. He had adjusted the load so he only had to carry his part. I stop by to tell you that God is in the business of adjusting loads so that all you have to carry is what you can. What then is our response? When God can change a bad chapter into a good story. Here's what I'd like for us to do. We have a church full of counselors. And listen, it is no lack of faith when you need help, any more than it lacks faith that when you are sick, you go to a doctor. Wouldn't it be great with all these rooms that we have, with all these counselors, if we could start some groups here at the church? Just start some groups where people are invited who have to deal with depression, people who have to deal with grief. And for a church to say, we're concerned about your spirit, but we also want your mind to be right, because God wants all of you. I don't know who I'm talking to today. I don't know who's wrestling with a challenging chapter, but I'm here to tell you that God is in the business of giving good stories.
So what if a bad chapter in your life doesn't actually have to be the final word? Today, we're going to break down a really powerful sermon by Dr. Delvin Atchison that connects our modern mental health crisis to an ancient story, and it offers, well, kind of a blueprint for rewriting your own ending. The sermon kicks off with this really blunt, provocative quote that just gets right to the point. It speaks to a reality that a lot of us felt, right? The pandemic didn't just create new problems, it basically turned the volume up on the challenges we were already facing, and it forced mental health right into the spotlight. And look, this isn't just some abstract idea. It's a crisis with a very real human cost. The sermon grounds this whole discussion in these heartbreaking, true stories of loss, especially among young people who, from the outside looking in, seem to have absolutely everything to live for. And just to show how real this is, Dr. Atchison points to this tragic pattern from just a single spring. Sarah Schulz, Katie Meyer, Lauren Burnett, Arlena Miller. All of them were gifted, high-achieving college athletes, and all of them died by suicide in the span of just a few months. It's just a stark, painful reminder of how deep this crisis of despair can really go. And for Dr. Atchison, this hits close to home. It's deeply personal. Arlena Miller's father is one of his dear friends. He talks about that feeling of just complete helplessness, sharing that, as a friend, sometimes the only thing you can do is just be present in the pain. You can't fix it. But right from that point of helplessness, he pivots to the central message of hope. He makes this direct plea: no matter how hard your life is, no matter what burden you're carrying, your story does not have to end in despair. there is another way. So to get this point across, he takes us back thousands of years to a story in the book of 2 Samuel. And he introduces us to a character who seems to be the very definition of brokenness and shame, a man named Mephibosheth. First, just look at his name, Mephibosheth. It literally means out of the mouth of shame. His entire identity is rooted in disgrace. I mean, can you imagine being introduced that way your whole life? Then you've got his physical condition. The text is really emphatic. It repeats that he was crippled in both feet. Now, in the original Hebrew, that repetition was a way of saying he wasn't just injured. He was completely broken. In that culture, that was basically a life sentence. He could never, ever reach his full potential. And finally, where does this guy live? A place called Lo Debar. In Hebrew, Lo means no, and Debar means thing. He lives in a place of no thing. So let's recap. You have a man named Shem who is completely broken, living in a town called Nothing. It's the picture of absolute, total hopelessness. So, how does someone end up in a state like this, in this place of complete despair? Well, the sermon starts to dig into the anatomy of this hurt, and it reveals something fascinating. His brokenness wasn't even caused by an enemy. The story reveals that Mephibosheth was dropped by his nurse, his caregiver, who was actually trying to save him while she was fleeing a dangerous situation. This raises such a crucial question. What do you do when you're broken and it isn't even your fault? When the person who hurt you was actually trying to help? This whole situation brings to mind a really powerful analogy. You know, the airplane oxygen mask rule. We're always told to put our own mask on first before helping others, right? Well, the sermon applies this directly to our emotional lives. How many of us are running around trying to put masks on other people while we ourselves can't breathe? The lesson is so clear. You cannot carry someone else if you haven't dealt with your own hurt first. Then he uses another powerful metaphor to show this danger, the Dead Sea. It has all these rivers flowing into it, but it has zero outlets. The only way water leaves is through evaporation, and that leaves behind so much salt that literally nothing can survive in it. And if you are constantly taking in other people's problems with any outlet for your own healing, you risk becoming a dead spot yourself. So here we are. We have a man named Shem, completely broken, living in nothing, hurt by someone who was trying to help. This really feels like the end of the story. But then there's a dramatic turn, because completely unknown to Mephibosheth, a king is searching for him. Just look at this incredible contrast. When Mephibosheth is finally summoned to the palace, his first thought is, okay, that's it. The king is going to kill me, to eliminate me as a rival. He's expecting punishment. But King David's actual question was, is there anyone left from that family that I can show favor to? He wasn't looking for a rival to eliminate. He was looking for someone to bless. And the king's actions here are just so intentional. First, he actively sought him out. He didn't just wait around for Mephibosheth to show up. Second, he saw him. Not just his family name, but his brokenness, his shame, his fear, and it didn't scare him off. And third, he seated him at his own table. And we really need to get this. Sitting at the king's table in that culture was so much more than just a free meal. It meant you were entering into a covenant. It was a public declaration of acceptance, of honor, and it was a promise that you now have access to everything the king possesses. I mean, talk about a turnaround, from a place of nothing to having access to everything. And this is where the sermon beautifully connects this ancient story directly to our modern lives. It offers a blueprint for how we can rewrite the final chapter, not just for ourselves, but for others too. The ultimate takeaway really boils down to this powerful idea. Life is full of difficult, painful, challenging chapters. We all have them, but those chapters do not have to be the final word. They don't have to define your entire story. Now, a lot of people in faith communities, when things get tough, they turn to a common phrase for comfort. This one right here. It's meant to be encouraging, suggesting our struggles will never get to be too overwhelming. But here's the twist. Dr. Atchison points out that this exact phrase, it's nowhere in the Bible. In fact, he says the point is the exact opposite. Life very often gives us far more than we can bear, alone. The whole idea is that we were never meant to bear it alone in the first place. Instead, the sermon offers this really beautiful image. God is in the business of adjusting loads. The analogy he gives is of a father lifting a heavy log with his young son. The father positions himself right in the middle of the log. making sure the weight his son feels is only what he can actually carry. The father adjusts the load. So what do we do with all this? How do we apply it? The sermon ends with a really clear call to action. It reframes seeking help not as a lack of faith, but as an act of wisdom. It hammers home that community is absolutely essential. We just can't do this alone. And it calls on all of us to create safe spaces where people can be honest about their struggles, recognizing that our minds matter just as much as our spirits.
And so, this all leaves us with a really powerful question to think about. If it's true that a bad chapter doesn't have to mean a bad story, what will you do to help write the next one, for yourself and for the people around you?
Westside, here are our announcements for the week. We kindly request that you refrain from bringing food or drinks into the sanctuary. Only water is allowed for medical purposes. Thank you for helping us to keep the sanctuary a special place. The Praise Dance Ministry will hold rehearsal on Saturday, October 11th at 9 a.m. Next Sunday, October 12th, is Connect Sunday. This is an opportunity for local church members to meet and interact with servant leaders, and for members from outside the Metroplex to join us in person. Please check the website for information on hotels and transportation. Guests traveling from outside the Metroplex will have an opportunity to meet Drs. Delvin and Brenda Atchison, along with online personalities, in-person team members, and the dedicated behind-the-scenes team. Faith and Blue. The Lewisville Police Department will join us for worship and share tips on staying safe in our community, schools, homes, and churches on Sunday, October 12th. After the service, meet the officers outside the main foyer for cookies and interaction. For more details, please contact Sister Jackie Massey. The Young Adults Epic Ministry will gather for Bible study Tuesday, October 14th at 7 p.m. This month's theme is Higher Worship. The scripture is John 4:24. God is spirit, and his worshipers must worship in spirit and in truth. The WBCCHURCH Ministry, in conjunction with Texas Health Resources, is offering a free drive-through flu shot clinic on Saturday, October 25th from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. here at Westside. No insurance needed. Sunday Fun Day for Westside members is November 2nd. For more information, please contact your deacon. For additional information regarding any of these announcements and much more, please visit us at WBCCHURCH.org. Weekly announcements are